People who fought their bullies back. What were the consequences? Story 1. After months of heckling and general talking shiznit, things came to a head. When I flipped him the bird, he pressed his chest on me. I shoved him back. Then the teacher, who knew about the bullying but told me to be thick-skinned because the bully was in special ed, kicked me out of the class. She accused me of being a tough guy, trying to make a name for myself from the big city. I had moved to Florida from New York. She wanted to put me in anger management and get special counseling. I cut my next class and called my dad. Unknown to me, he left work minutes after my call and confronted my teacher, provoking her to anger so she could feel what I felt those months. I haven't even been here 15 minutes and you're already flustered. Imagine what my son had to go through. She apologized to me the next day and the jackass was kept away from me the rest of the year. Story 2. While not a typical bully, he was a spoiled rich kid who would mock everyone and was always better than everyone else. His dad was a lawyer, so he'll always drop a "We'll sue you if you touch me." Also, he would nacho and soda rock cars. Anyway, I broke his arm one time. I'll never forget what the principal said to me. "He's a twerp." I would have done the same thing, but his dad's a lawyer, so just stay home tomorrow and I'll tell him you're suspended. For what it's worth, we've been moderately decent friends the 19 years since. Look, we have 20 stories to get through here, so I'll have plenty of chances to say something meaningful about bullying. But for right now, I need to ask what the heck a soda rock is and what happens when you chunk one at a car. I can mostly imagine what happens with the nachos. My friend threw a cheese burrito at a car in high school and it had the unfortunate result of exploding all over us. But a soda rock? That's just plain fascinating. Anyway, I'm glad this OP and their bully managed to become friends. It's a more common story than you might think, but it's still always nice to hear. Still, I'm going to sue the pants off this kid if he doesn't tell me what a soda rock is. Story 3. My worst bully finally made me snap in middle school. I came up to him in the hall and smashed his head into his locker and hit him till the teacher pulled us apart. The next week he came to my house to make peace and be friends. As soon as we got out of earshot of my mom, his cronies jumped me and held me down while he put 22 bullets in each of my feet from a critter rifle. Up until this I was a promising cross-country runner. I healed, but never got back into it. They went to juvie and I got meaner. I didn't trust anyone else for the rest of school. Okay, I don't normally comment again this soon, but I just have to say that if you don't know what a critter rifle is, don't bother asking me. I choose to believe it's a bazooka-shaped item that fires out the lovably adorable creatures from the beloved pet movie Critters. This OP should thank their bully for introducing them to such an incredible artifact. Story 4. Got constantly chased around school, in like 6th grade by these 3 big kids. For about 3 months, they would just chase me. The few times they caught me, I would get fucked up. One of the 3 guys was the biggest and was the main instigator. The one time when the other 2 were pushing me around by the stairwell, I snapped. I focused on one and punched him till he fell to the ground. The other guy fled. During the fight, I apparently kicked him in the head, so he reported me, and I got in trouble. They didn't give a shiznit about my story like the other times I tried reporting. Funny, normally, kicking a kid in the head is how you become the protagonist of Ender's Game. Too bad for this OP, their luck stats were set to 0. Story 5. Was a scrawny little kid in high school, into computers and D&D, and socially awkward, so I was prime real estate for bullying. From about 4th grade until 10th grade, I was the target of it. I had 3 primary antagonists, one of whom rode the bus with me. I did my best to ignore him if I was shoved or heckled. Then one day he shoved me down, and I got back up and he stood over me. "What are you gonna do?" I stood up, then jumped up and socked him right on the bottom of his jaw, and the sound of his teeth clacking together was perfect. He took a few steps back to regain his balance, and just stood there with a very confused look and a bit of blood from what I assume was a cut tongue. He awkwardly turned away and said nothing. The next day his buddy stopped me in the hallway. Their primary leader shoved me against a wall and hit me with one of the hardest punches I had ever received right into the face. Bloodied and a fair bit angry, I kicked him in the nuts, kicked him in the face when he doubled over and while he was on his back on the floor, I swung my book bag full of books as hard as I could over my head and down onto his face. He didn't move after that. His other buddy and I went into fist blow and more fist blow until we could get pulled apart. I think I socked my favorite teacher in the melee. The guy I whacked the day before was noticeably absent from the scuffle and told his buddies I'll fight if provoked now. I don't think they believed him. Well, I don't. I unloaded many years of bottled up anger onto them in a moment of absolute rage. I had a concussion from being kicked in the head, 2 swollen black eyes, bloody knuckles, and various other small cuts and bruises, and so did they. I was left alone after that. I became friends with 2 of them over the next few years. Story 6. In high school, I caught a lot of shiznit from this one guy. He was bigger than me. Not much, mind you, but in his mind, he was towering over me. He would belittle me verbally, push me, knock books out of my hand, trip me on the stairs, etc. Our sophomore year I had enough. It was the first week of school and he gave me a flat tire as I was walking down the hallway, in a crowded hallway intersection full of freshly minted freshmen trying to find their new classes. I didn't have a plan. I just racked it. I yelled, "Holy shiznit, Joe had an accident. Hey everybody, clear the way. Joe needs to get to the nurse's office. Come on everybody, this isn't a joke. This guy needs to get changed before his next class." Dude froze in stunned horror as the hallway noise stopped and people began to make an opening for him to move through. I'm guessing out of shock. He just sort of walked through the opening. No denial, no rage, just sort of stunned silence. That was enough to establish the rumor that Big Joe shiznit his pants. The rumor evolved over time that he wore diapers, that it was a result of a football injury, etc. No one made fun of him. Mind you, it was a smallish school. Our graduating class was around 200 students. And while gay was still a regular insult, unless, of course, you actually were gay, in which case, whatever you do. Medical conditions were not mocked, but occasionally you hear whispers about it, particularly whenever Big Joe would try to do something big and bad. He left me, and most others that he was bullying, alone after that, settled him right down like neutering dogs, ran into him after graduation, and like most people I went to high school with, just acted like we were long-lost friends catching up. Okay, I had all kinds of issues with the last story and how it didn't quite capture fights realistically, but I left it alone because it felt more important to call shenanigans on this one. Big Joe did not have his reputation ruined by some kid yelling random nonsense in the hall. Raise your hand if you ever went to a school where a girl was rumored to put peanut butter on her meat curtains and let her dog lick it off. Now put your hand down, because I assume you all raised them. Rumors mean nothing, and even high school kids know it. But the biggest flaw in this rumor is that it was immediately apparent that it was untrue. Unless Joe had no hygiene whatsoever, it wouldn't be lost on the high school populace that they smelled absolutely nothing when he walked by. They weren't in stunned silence out of respect for Joe. They were silent because OP was showing signs of a mental disability, and they weren't sure how to deal with. But that actually is a good way to get out of bullying in 2022. I have to assume even the bullies are at least somewhat woke. Story 7. HHM. When I just tried to fight back alone, it became more of a circle. It really ended when a classmate contacted the teacher. Our teacher was head of the mediation group of our school, and because our class was kinda a problem class, they tested quite a few new educational methods with us. So when the theme of bullying came, she took the 3 main pillars of the class out together with the 3 most social guys that were liked, but also known to be fair. One of these 3 were also the one that tipped the teacher off. They were sat during a lesson alone in a room, and they had to discuss why bullying happened, what motivates the bully, and what it makes with the victim, and had to hold the presentation about it in the end. The final task of these 6 was to think up possible punishments to prevent further bullying. That idea of our teacher was quite effective.
Story 8. Knocked kid out and got suspended. Mom took me out for ice cream, and I got to spend the 3 days doing whatever I wanted. She was proud of me for restraining myself for 3 years, and for standing up for myself. Bully didn't get in trouble, because the other kids he was picking on at the same time were too scared to speak up. He did, however, stop bullying kids when I was around. Story 9. He was one of my best friends growing up. High school came, and he changed. He bullied me all the time, so I stood up for myself. He continued to bully me after we fought, so I fought him again within a week. He didn't win or lose each time. It was kind of a tie. He was a wrestler / football player, and I was a nobody. His job friends made fun of him for not winning. He stopped after that. Now we are back to being super close. Story 10. My mom and I got called into the principal's office. Mom said that the kid had been bullying me, and that if I'd hit him, he deserved it. Just look at my behavioral record up to that point. Spotless, blah blah blah. Principal agreed, and that was the end of it. There was a lot more reasonable thought in school back in 1982. I could only imagine I'd be expelled or arrested under zero tolerance today. I'm sure this is a common belief, so let me clear it up. This is not true. Yes, we have zero tolerance policies now, but they are not usually so warped as to threaten the victim rather than the bully. I won't say it never happened. In fact, feel free to share your stories in the comments if it's happened to you. But for the most part, teachers are not robots, and do understand that people are sometimes pushed to their limit. That's not an endorsement to punch your bully. I would never suggest that. I'm just saying, it probably won't be the worst thing in the world if you do it. Story 11. A family lived at the end of the street, all of them neo-Nazis. The 3 brothers used to chase me home from school, call me that word they love so much, and spit on me. One day, they got me off my bike, and I got a black eye. My dad saw it and said I had full permission to fight back. Since there were 3, I was scared. So, the next day, as soon as they rounded the turn, I jumped off my bike, made some kind of awkward walk ride, and swung my bike at him. The chain gear clips the biggest dude's chin, and he got a nasty cut. Tire hit another, and I started punching the shiznit out of the smallest one. They all took off. From there on, I would put raw eggs in plastic bags and let them sit out for a week. I would routinely do drive-bys on their house, throwing my rotten egg bombs at it. They never fucked with me again. Story 12. There was this one kid and his bigger brother at karate practice who always bullied me. One time I attended a kickboxing seminar, and I saw that kid there too. At some point, we had to spar with each other, and by all chances I had to fight against him. His brother wasn't there, so he looked way less confident than usual. Turns out he fought like shiznit too, because I floored that motherfucker. After that day, the bullying stopped. Story 13. We were on a class camping trip, and this one kid Pascal kept pushing me and calling me names because he thought the girls would like him more for being tough. At some point, a blood red mist entered my vision, and I started a beat down on him. I mean the whole red face murder face thing. My dad and his dad were helping the class by keeping the kids in line on the trip. They were just standing there watching. My dad says to Pascal's dad, things are getting a little heated over there. Pascal's dad, he probably asked, and then the teacher came over, and he wanted to tear me off the kid. His dad stops him and tells him to let it go while I'm still laying into this kid. Anyway, a death by 1,000 fists later, and I calmed down. My dad pats me on the head for a job well done. Pascal's dad took his little after birth looking crotch spawn away, and that was the end. Not a word from the teacher. See, this is what I'm saying about unrealistic fight. There is no way this OP punched his bully 1,000 times without breaking his fist. Look, I get it. Bullies are awful. We all have our revenge fantasies, but can we keep them off of Reddit? They only serve to inspire kids who don't know any better than to enter a fight they have no chance of winning. Not to mention that if this were a real story, the teacher should probably probably be fired. Come on, guys. But becoming one yourself, especially at the risk of your knuckle bone, is not the way to deal with them. Story 14. I decided to fight back using the same method that the bully preferred, verbal. I was so disgustingly polite to him that it clearly irritated the shiznit out of him. Just a big shiznit eating grin on my face the whole time. Best part, no consequences. Story 15. I was suspended 16 times and eventually expelled in the last year of high school. I was a bit of a weird kid and a magnet for that kind of shiznit. One particularly memorable occasion was with a meeting between me, my parents, my teachers, and my counselors where the school was saying I had anger issues. I responded with, I don't have anger issues. I've got a bullying issue. If they just stop bullying me, I'll stop hitting them. My dad just creased with laughter, as did the deputy head teacher. Still didn't stop the bullying though. A few of the bodies are dead now, and the only one who tried to carry that shiznit on after high school ended up getting the shiznit kicked out of him in the street by me. Story 16. This is from a comment I wrote a while back on this topic. As a victim of bullying, mainly verbal, while I was in high school, they would push me to the point where it just boiled over, and I saw it. One time, I beat the ever-living shiznit out of some total asshole who absolutely deserved it. I was caught by a teacher. Didn't matter what it was I said, I was clearly in the wrong. I got punishment, lines, and detention. This other little fucker got away with it. Later, he told me that it really hurt, but the only reason he did it was because it was also really funny, and me getting lines was icing on the cake. I still can't comprehend it. What's funny about having the shiznit beaten out of you? That wasn't even the last time they pushed me to that point. Sadly, for me, it continued right up until I left high school. The damage was already done for me. I'm not good with people in general. I don't have much feeling of self-worth or self-confidence. I have essentially no social life and no real interest in having one. Despite feeling lonely at times, I'm married to a very understanding woman and I've got a decent job, so I can't really say it ruined my life, but I never understood the why aspect of it, other than some people are just assholes. Again, I have to strongly advise against this philosophy. First of all, you should definitely be afraid of being hurt. There is literally nothing good about it. But second of all, half these stories are basically telling you to risk spending your years in juvie just to prove a point that doesn't actually need to be proven. Potentially ruining your own life will not eliminate bullies from the world. They will still exist, and if anything, they'll thrive, because the people who had enough guts to stand up to them are taking themselves out by putting themselves in correctional facilities. This is not the way to go. If you want to ruin your life, then by all means, become a violent psychopath and break all the bones in your bully's hand. But if you want to feel like you're actually smarter than your bullies, then literally just be smarter and find a better way. If you can't do that, then you don't get to pretend you're any better than they are. Story 19. I was bullied physically and emotionally on and off by one guy who would egg on everyone else in the class to join in. It was a brutal time in my life. I enrolled in karate, but still lacked confidence to do anything about it. I'm a really gentle person, so causing harm to someone really takes effort on my part. One day, after a few months of karate, he decided to start that shiznit up again. He started pushing me around and taunting me. He had no idea I had been taking karate, mostly because I didn't have anyone to talk to in those days. I just kept walking away, and he'd get back in my face about it. A childhood friend happened to be nearby and watching this. We weren't friends anymore, but he'd never joined in the class-wide taunting. He had a reputation to maintain too, so I respected that he just remained silent. But this day, he started laughing along with the bully. That just kind of set something off, and I went straight at the bully. I didn't use a single thing I learned in karate, not a scrap. I pounced on him and used my body weight to topple him to the ground. While on top of him, I started screaming at the top of my lungs while punching him in the chest and stomach. I stopped when my whole body hurt from adrenaline and I realized he was crying. I ran to the bathroom and had a panic attack from hurting someone. I felt terrible even hurting this asshole. I threw up in my mouth a few times, went back to class 10 to 15 minutes late. He wasn't bloody or bruised, but he was clearly in a fight since the teacher didn't give a fuck that I was being bullied. She certainly didn't give a fuck that the class D-bag got in a fight, but she didn't say a word about me being late. She didn't even acknowledge me re-entering the room when she was mid-lesson. Everyone knew what happened. Nobody said anything. Nobody warmed up to me after that either. The bully didn't avoid me, but he didn't talk to me again either. In later years, when people had some more maturity, people told me they were happy I beat the shiznit out of him, but didn't know how the popular kids would react to it since it wasn't a stand-up fight. The feral nature of my attack was a gray area for 11-year-old, and they didn't really know if I should be considered a badass or a lunatic. Story 20. It was in high school, and when I tried to fight back, I got in trouble for not just turning the other cheek and ignoring them. One of them pulled my shorts down in gym class also, and when I reported it, I was told boys will be boys. The kicker is that those same shiznitbags now post on their Facebook about how their kids are being bullied, and how it's no fun, that nothing is being done about it. Okay, I can't hammer this in enough. It is not funny that their kids are being bullied. Their kids did not bully you. Their kids are innocent. Also, pulling your shorts down sucks, and it's dumb that the teachers wrote it off the way they did. That said, it really is the kind of thing that idiotic kids do because they think it's funny without explicit intent to bully anyone. So, I'm not ready to celebrate the fact that some third-party kids are being bullied, which for all you know might include actual physical abuse, just because their parents made some people see your boxer shorts 20 years ago. Bullying is a real issue. And there are real-world, intelligent ways. Everyone just wants to go Ted Bundy on some folks or laugh at innocent children who had nothing to do with the original incidents. I'm not here for it. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Did the bullies discussed in this thread create the psychos we've seen? Or were they simply trying to beat the obvious Ted Bundys of the world into submission before they could grow up to become the very clear sociopaths they are? I'm sure my thoughts on these were controversial, but good gravy. We live in a world that gets violently angry every time Disney releases a new remake. The last thing we need is to celebrate people going off every time they feel mad, because everyone's already mad all the time. Let's all just calm down a little and remember we have minds and voices.